Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to another Friday video here with a recommendation for an 80s slasher which somehow I'd never gotten around to until recently, and I don't even recall ever hearing about it until recently, which is for the 1981 film The Burning. This one came on my radar for a few reasons, one being it was mentioned at some point on a horror podcast that I listened to, so I kind of put it in like a queue of mine to watch. Then it came up again as I've been kind of going through all of Starfleet Academy, and so I was looking into some of the previous work that Holly Hunter had done and saw that she was in this one. Even though she's barely in it, I don't even think that she has any lines. But some other recognizable faces in this one are Jason Alexander, who of course later on went to do some little show called Seinfeld, you may have heard of, and Brian Backer, who was in films like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and another film I covered, wasn't very popular, called Moving Violations, as well as Ned Eisenberg, who was also in Moving Violations, and is where I got this scene that I'd posted a while back on, I think, Instagram, TikTok, and I might have even put up a YouTube short.
Listen, we'll go down to the video store and we'll rent Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That'll relax you.
Regarding horror therapy. But a synopsis for this film is as follows. Abusive former summer camp caretaker Cropsy, horribly burned from a prank gone wrong 5 years earlier, lurks around upstate New York, a summer camp Stonewater, with garden shears and bent on killing the teenagers responsible for his disfigurement. Now, as this was the 80s, we get a similar casting as I mentioned in last week's video for Waxwork, in that we have a lot of people in their early to mid-20s cast as teenagers, with the only exception actually being Fisher Stevens, who you may know from films such as Short Circuit and Hackers and a bunch of stuff since, which I'd also covered Hackers a little while back, about a year ago, and I believe he actually was a teenager in this one, being about 19 at the time. It's always interesting how a lot of these shows and films will cast somebody that is just so much obviously older than a teenager. I actually had to look up when this takes place, if they're supposed to be teenagers or not. But at any rate, 80s slashers, they're always a lot of fun, whether it's like the top of the popularity with ones like Friday the 13th, or ones which are kind of made fun of at the time, but then later like fully embraced and kind of celebrated, like Sleepaway Camp. Or ones which completely slipped me by, like not just this one, but ones like The Prowler, which I watched last year and really had a lot of fun with that one. We had a lot of these in the 80s, and then they kind of died out for a bit, and I believe Scream is kind of credited as bringing the slasher film back in 1996, and hey, we got a new one of those starting today, Scream Part 7. But for this one, I really did enjoy it, the idea of this prank gone wrong. We've seen it before in other films. So this is more about how they kind of utilize that aspect in this story, whether rather than whether it's like original or not. Now, as a synopsis says, this prank was pulled, and it's really bad. They were setting up like this skull that they dug up with candles in the eyes next to this caretaker as he slept. So needless to say, he wakes up, freaks out, knocks a thing over, and accidentally sets his whole place ablaze, getting himself engulfed in those flames as well. And now it's 5 years later, people at this camp are starting to get taken out. These campers, though, are what sell the film. We only have a few which stick out as ones I would consider kind of, bad, that I wanted them to be taken out. But for the most part, I definitely liked everyone. The actors have great chemistry, and I got really caught up in just the day-to-day time at this camp, rather than like waiting for a kill to happen. These little associations and relationships between all these characters, what's going on at the camp and so on. And looking back, compared to some other films that I've seen, at least, the kills were kind of sparse for good chunks of this running time. So when a kill does happen, it's a bit more shocking, it kind of stands out more. With the exception being at one point, about an hour in, we do get a much bigger set of killings happening that's very brutal, and it's kind of away from the camp. So as other campers kind of discover this, they're now having to try to get back to the camp after experiencing this. It's a nice change from a killer kind of working their way through from cabin to cabin and staying right within that camp environment. But, sorry, I'm definitely sick. But, that's where this one, I think, really worked for me, where it's like all those aspects. We got characters which for the most part are very likable, so I don't want them to die, and it's shocking when they do, so you bring a little bit of that fright to it. It's kind of light on the kills for large portions, making the kills when they do happen a bit more shocking. They kind of stand out. You never get desensitized to them. And kills happening in some cases much further away from the camp in the surrounding areas. And on top of all that, it is, pretty simple, short, and to the point, with our killer being deformed from the fire and using these gardening shears, with nothing supernatural or any big leaps or large suspensions of disbelief needed to kind of get on board with what's happening. Compared to like some other slashers, noticeably like the Friday 13th films, where you need to believe that Jason survived as a kid after drowning and just grew up in the woods, and then later on being electrocuted and brought back to life. You're really asked to take a big leap to believe that slasher. This one seemed a lot more believable, that it's just, guy had a prank gone wrong, he's all burned up, he's gonna get revenged. But also, unlike some other slashers, it's really wrapped up at the end. There's no big cliffhanger, simply a new set of campers kind of telling the story of what had gone down. Because of this, and looking like, I think it looks like it only made about half of its budget back, we never got any sequels, we never got any spin-offs. But this one, like The Prowler, another slasher that I had missed originally and watched last year and really enjoyed, I kind of consider it, for me at least, to be a hidden gem, and one that I would definitely, sit down with again, and as I feel that it's more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out this quickest little video here for The Burning from 1981, which at the time of this video is on Tubi, Canopy, and Prime. So if it sounds interesting and you're up for a lesser talked about quick 90-minute 80s slasher film, head on over and check it out. Anyways, that's all I've got for this one. Sorry it's kind of quick. I've definitely picked up some sort of a bug, and but anyways, thanks for coming by and sticking around to the end. I have some links coming up in a moment for some other related videos, so be sure to check those out. If you enjoyed, please give me a thumbs up, and if not already a subscriber, consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.